There's one thing that the average American thinks about 250 times per day. And it's not what you might think. It's food and deciding what to eat. Knowing what to eat is kind of essential for our survival, right? Despite this, 8 out of 10 Americans say that they encounter a lot of conflicting information about what to eat. And more than half of those say it makes them doubt their choices. As our confusion around food is growing, so is the American fitness and diet industry. Americans spend north of $60 billion annually on being told what to eat and trying to lose pounds. On everything from paying for gym memberships, to joining weight loss programs, to drinking diet soda. 45 million Americans go on a diet each year. The average Brit is estimated to start a staggering 189 diets in their lifetime. When you type in the best diet on Google, you're provided with 938 million results. You'll find promising headlines from people saying that the keto diet's the best. Others will be trumpeting the vegan diet. And others still will recommend going paleo. Oh, and there's also a few posts on the best diet for your cat. Because as humans, we don't just tend to become a little bit overweight ourselves. We're also pretty good at making our pets a little bit chubby too. Compare that to animals in the wild, and they're all pretty lean. Compare that to what we once looked like when we were in the wild, and we were pretty lean too. What I want to know is what those guys knew that we don't seem to be able to find on Google. I'm pretty sure these hunter-gatherers had no idea about the calorie content of foods, macros, or how to burn fat. But despite this, they remained lean, athletic, and relatively healthy. Today, we have all the information, research, and diet products available at our fingertips. Yet we're considerably more overweight, unfit, unhealthy, and may I add, unhappy, with 1 in 4 people suffering from a mental health disease. Now, you might think when looking at these pictures that the reason we look different today is because of our more sedentary lifestyle. But according to Herman Pontzer, who analyzed the energy expenditure of one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer tribes on the planet, their energy expenditure is not that different to the average Americans today. His explanation for their lean physique was they don't overeat, so they don't become obese. Well, that's helpful, but maybe he has a point. I think most of us can admit to sometimes eating a little bit more than what we truly need. We might eat because we're bored, or because we're tired, or because we're stressed or sad, or because it's a certain time of the day, or because we're presented with something that looks delicious. Food is no longer exclusively used as fuel, but sometimes when we need nourishment on a deeper level too. What I mean by that is that a lot of us have lost the ability to differentiate between our need for fuel, as in food to nourish our cells, and the stuff that fills our hearts and souls, that make us feel fulfilled. Fulfillment is what we experience when we pursue our purpose, when we're happy in our careers, when we spend time with the people we love, when we challenge ourselves in sports, when we have a spiritual practice, or when we help others. This is what truly nourishes us, and what I was trained to refer to as primary food. But when our primary food is a little bit out of balance, we're more likely to turn to something to eat to fill the void. It's easier to stuff our face with ice cream than to deal with our lack of fulfillment in our love life or in our careers. Again, this isn't a behavior you typically see among animals. So beyond the fact that we sometimes use food as a way to deal with our emotions or our lack of fulfillment, what else can we learn from primitive animals about their relationship with food? Well, for one, I'm pretty sure they're not as confused about us about food. And for two, I'm pretty sure they don't rely on diets as a way to establish boundaries in order not to overeat. I've never seen a group of squirrels discuss, like, calorie content of nuts. Like, it just doesn't happen, right? I'm pretty sure this is something only humans do. Just like I'm pretty sure we're the only species on Earth to go on diets. And the problem with diets is that most people who go on a diet to lose weight end up regaining all the weight or more within a few years. We already know that diets don't work, that they're frustrating and perhaps not the best thing for our mental health. But what we didn't know until recently is that the fluctuations in weight that come as a result of going on diets can be detrimental to our physical health. As someone who used to be a sucker for trying the best diet, trust me, I know how confusing it can be. I also have experienced firsthand what it can do to our physical and mental health. 15 years ago, I was in a pretty different place to where I am today. My mind was consumed with being healthy, eating healthy, exercising, and doing everything perfectly well to be healthy. But despite this, I was depressed and I felt horrible. I ended up working with a therapist, and later on that year, I was diagnosed with a gut disease. I was gobsmacked. I'd put so much time and effort into being healthy, and now I was sick. I started working with a nutritionist, and together we started healing my body the same way I'd managed to damage it, through food. In the weeks, months, and years that followed, I completely transformed my way of eating. I healed my body, I healed my mind, but I also healed my relationship with food. I learned how to use my common sense when it came to food, to stop getting sucked into the noise coming from the diet industry, and to start trusting my gut about what was best for me instead. Looking back at it now, I realize that this is where I'd failed. Instead of trusting my gut when I felt bloated as a result of drinking milk, I decided to trust the study about the benefits of dairy. Instead of relying on my common sense that told me that the healthiest food is the food we find in nature, I got sucked into buying processed foods because they were labeled as healthy. And I know I'm not alone in this. Just like the dieting industry, the processed food industry has massively benefited from our confusion around food. As our confusion has grown, we have become the perfect target for messages of convenience and health claims. Ask a group of young children which one of these are healthier, and they'll tell you it's the broccoli, because they use their common sense. Yet a lot of us adults have been conditioned to believe that eating the broccoli or the chocolate bar will have the same repercussions on our health. And this is where we have a problem. As we have become more and more insecure and confused about food, we have become the perfect target for those who stand to profit from our confusion. We're not just confused about what to eat, we're also a little bit confused about when to eat. Instead of trusting our hunger, we rely on diets and rules and media reports. But the problem with relying on external advice on when to eat is that it sometimes requires us to go against our internal cues. And that requires willpower and discipline, both of which are finite resources. So sooner or later, we break the rules, we judge ourselves, we feel like we've failed. But as neuroscience shows, when we judge ourselves, the areas of our brain that help us grow switch off. So judging ourselves doesn't foster a change in behavior. Having compassion for ourselves does. It may seem like a simple mind shift, but it truly works. I recently had a client who committed to eating healthier and who decided to go vegan. Yet shortly thereafter, she had a steak and fries. She felt truly distraught and disappointed in herself, but I encouraged her not to judge herself, but to see it as a step on her journey towards finding what was best for her instead. Because the thing is, she hadn't failed. The diet had failed. And we all know that diets are destined for failure. So as long as you try and stick with a certain diet, you'll keep failing. Finally, we're also a little bit confused about why we eat. As I mentioned earlier, we all have a tendency to use food as a way of dealing with our emotions or to fill the void experienced in other areas of our life. I used to use food as a carrot or as a stick, telling myself, you don't deserve this, Or, if you go to the gym every day this week and eat perfectly healthy, you deserve a cheat day. I was like that one friend you have who turns down birthday celebrations and dinner invitations, all in the name of being healthy, then eats their body weight in junk food because it's cheat day, then feels horrible but decides to do it all over again the week after. I realized that by isolating myself from the people I loved and from missing out on dinner invitations and parties was like, all in the name of being healthy, was like missing out on life for the sake of being healthy. It made no sense. I was depriving myself from my primary food, fulfillment, and it was making it even harder for me to find balance with my secondary food, the food on my plate. So now that we know what doesn't work, what is it that does work in making better choices about what, when, and why we eat? Well, first of all, applying our common sense when choosing our fuel. There's a great quote by Michael Pollan that says, "Eat real foods, mostly plants." There's another one which is, "If it comes from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't." It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. I know processed foods can be tempting, but they often fail to fill us up in the same way as real food does. They also sometimes create a false sense of hunger, what some experts refer to as toxic hunger. Replacing processed foods with real food is definitely what helped me reduce and finally start trusting my hunger. Perhaps this was one of the secrets of the squirrels or the hunter-gatherers, eating real food like nature intended us to, and thus not overeating. When it comes to why you eat, start exploring the emotions that make you eat, and then try and find ways of dealing with them that don't involve food. It could be going for walks in nature when you feel stressed, or taking deep breath when you feel anxious, or watching funny videos when you feel sad. Start exploring what works for you. At the same time, take an honest look at your life and the areas that matter to you. Is that job you're doing fulfilling you, or is it draining you? How about that relationship? Seek out the areas in your life that lack fulfillment and start filling them up with things that are meaningful to you. Also, trust your gut. You don't need more diets. You don't need more structure. You don't need more discipline. Think of the squirrel and the hunter-gatherers and trust your gut if certain things don't feel right for you. Finally, be kind to yourself. Despite what it might sound like, my transformation didn't happen overnight, and no one else's I've helped either. Eating is one of our most basic skills, but transforming our relationship with food is not easy. Millions of people are still confused about what makes a healthy diet and unsure of how they can improve their eating habits. But the answers we're looking for, they don't lie with the dieting industry. They don't lie with the processed food industry or some magic pill. And they don't lie with our governments who are stretched to meet the cost of our ever-growing need for health care. Or should I say sick care? The answer to better health comes from each and every one of us taking responsibility for our health, for supporting behaviors that promote the well-being in future generations. It comes from using our common sense when choosing our fuel, from not getting sucked into the noise created by the diet industry, for not believing in their ability to know better than us, and for not judging ourselves if we sometimes eat things we know not to be healthy. As long as you try and pursue perfection and beat yourself up for not achieving it, you will fail. The answer to better health doesn't come from beating yourself up for not being able to stick to a certain diet, but from learning how to cook simple meals you enjoy from scratch, from teaching our kids about the basics about nutrition, and for savoring and enjoying our meals together. It comes from being critical of labels and from telling our children about the virtues of real food instead, like saying that carrots make you see in the dark, or spinach makes you strong. Let's encourage our kids to pursue their purpose, to find nourishment in the things that make them happy. And let's all learn how to differentiate between our need for fuel and our need for fulfillment. Your body knows what it needs to be healthy. All you need to do is to stop looking for answers on the outside and start listening to what's going on the inside. If you learn how to listen to your body when it whispers, you won't need to hear it scream. Thank you.